Asus ZenBook Pro 14 OLED is the truly portable version of a powerful series dedicated to content creators, video editing, streaming, graphic design, photography, architecture, game development, etc. Last year, Asus launched the dual-screen version, the Duo model. Mysteriously, in 2023, they've reverted to a more traditional model. No multiple screens, no elevating keyboards, nothing. Simple, classic, clean. Too clean, I'd say. There are moments when I think Asus has 10 design departments scattered around the globe, each perfectly isolated from the others. I'll also explain launching the daring, innovative ZenBook Pro 16X OLED, both in terms of design and ergonomics and cooling, then turning around and releasing a smaller, tamer, more traditional sibling that hardly stands out. And if you don't believe me, I invite you to check out the video on our channel about the ZenBook Pro 16X OLED, where we discuss it extensively. Of course, this doesn't mean that the ZenBook Pro 14 OLED isn't a suitable tool for design and creation, but clearly with its tiny chassis unaided by extra cooling technologies like the active aerodynamic system or vapor chamber, there will be physical limitations related to temperature. But let's start at the beginning with the design and construction. The ZenBook Pro 14 OLED is conservative. For many of you, that's in a good way. Maybe some don't want moving parts, screens or keyboards that lift. But coming immediately after testing its larger 16-inch sibling, this model feels almost mundane to me. The ultra-compact chassis built around the 14.5-inch screen isn't devoid of elegance though. For example, viewed from the side, you wouldn't think the tiny ZenBook has an overall thickness of less than 18 mm. It appears slimmer than many other 14-inch compact laptops. This is because the edges of the lower chassis thin out right below the area dedicated to connectors and ventilation slots, and the entire bottom chassis becomes more slender towards the front ends, a signature of the ZenBook series from its earliest origins. But you realize this slenderness is actually an optical illusion when you feel its respectable weight of 1.7 kilos. Still, I believe we have a pretty good balance between cooling and battery on one hand and weight and portability on the other. Inside, it hides an extremely powerful processor, an Intel Core i9 from the H series, not some typical U or P series processor meant for laptops like this. Although, after a cool-headed analysis of the results, temperatures and throttling, I believe a more modest processor, like the i7 13700H, could have been chosen. But nowadays, everyone is chasing the top specs, and it seems we've lost touch with reality. I'll delve deeper into this topic when discussing performance, temperatures, and noise. And one more thing about cooling. Although I wanted to address this in its own section, there's a construction-related issue that needs discussion here and now. I mentioned earlier that this model lacks those extras in terms of cooling, like the active aerodynamic system seen in the 16-inch model. But at the same time, I'm glad it doesn't have the ErgoLift hinge that raises the lower chassis off the table. Why? Because here we have fairly tall feet at the back, allowing for a better airflow underneath the laptop. On the other hand, the immediate expulsion of hot air is mandatory for the small cooling system in place, and the ErgoLift would obstruct the flow of hot air, making it hit the base of the screen. We have 4 exhaust vents, 2 on the sides and 2 in the back, ensuring maximum cooling for this tiny chassis without any obstructions. The chassis is solid aluminum, which adds weight to the laptop, but in a good way, providing extra sturdiness compared to a more malleable magnesium alloy. The hinges are also solidly built. Everything feels well built, premium, no compromises were made on quality, materials or joints. The 14.5 OLED touchscreen is protected with a new glass dedicated to laptops, Corning Gorilla Glass NBT, which is more scratch resistant. On another note, I would have preferred if the laptop lid could open more. The keyboard is comfortable, but the actuation force seems a bit too high compared to other laptops. Obviously, many will love this tactile feedback, but typing might be slower and more tiring than on softer and lighter keyboards. The key travel is 1.4 mm, just like on the larger ZenBook Pro 16X OLED, but I didn't find this to be a problem. The similarities with the Pro X16's keyboard don't end here. The dimensions and space between the keys are equally generous, and evidently, Asus took advantage of the absence of the side speakers to maximize space. The keycaps here are also slightly concave with a 0.2 mm dip, guiding fingers easily toward the center of the keys. Here, as on the ZenBook Pro 16X OLED, we have the Asus dial present. Understandably, since we're talking about a laptop meant for content creators. Only this time, the control wheel has been integrated into the touchpad, which might be better. Why? With a smaller wristpad area, it's less likely we accidentally rest our palm on the dial. Moving on to the ports, if the 6 ports on the ZenBook Pro 16X OLED seemed few to me, the same 6 ports seem more than reasonable on the smaller ZenBook Pro 14 OLED. Especially since this one also has hot air exhaust slots on both sides, not just the back. Here I truly feel the space was maximized. We have 2 Type-C ports on the right side, one with Thunderbolt 4 and the other a standard USB-C 3.2 Gen 2. Also on the right is the SD card reader. On the left side, we have a USB Type-A 3.2 Gen 2 port, an HDMI 2.1 port, audio jack, and the power port. And now, the display. If the screen on a ZenBook Pro 16X OLED was the most beautiful, accurate, and uniform I've ever seen, I expected it given the price of that model. So, I had lower expectations for this 14-inch model due to its more affordable price. But guess what? I had a revelation. What a screen we have here. Before discussing measurements, I want to pause for a moment to praise this year's trend, the 16:10 format. The OLED panel in question also has an immense resolution for its size, 2880 by 1800 pixels, and a refresh rate of 120 Hz, or dynamic like phones if you prefer that. Colors are by the book, 100% DCI-P3, 96% Adobe RGB. Delta E across 24 colors and shades of grey is truly remarkable, below 1. As with the absolutely magnificent OLED panel on its bigger brother, the ZenBook Pro 16X OLED, the SpiderX Elite Data Color Calibration software gives this monitor a 4.5 with 2 maximum scores of 5 out of 5. Maximum brightness, 370 nits, I find the brightness being ample. The contrast is practically infinite, 0.03 nits. Within the margin of error of the colorimeter, the black is pure black, as if the screen were off. In HDR mode, we get an extra boost in brightness, up to 550 nits, enough for any video material watched on any streaming platform in this format. Color uniformity is almost as good as on the larger ZenBook's 16-inch panel, only slightly less so. The largest delta E deviation is 1.9. It was 1.5 on the Pro 16X OLED. And the good news continues. Brightness uniformity across all areas of the panel is also remarkable. Out of 36 samples measured, only in one area did I measure a maximum deviation of 3%. It seems this is Asus's new standard for top OLEDs, and I'll have to get used to it, but that won't be hard. Quite the opposite, it's a pleasure. On the audio side, I'm also satisfied. We don't have speakers on par with a MacBook Pro, but the sound is good. Perhaps the bass is a bit underwhelming, and the overall volume seems a tad low. But for its size, the ZenBook Pro 14 OLED has a good audio system, maybe one of the best in its class. And now let's quickly dive into the internals, focusing on the processor and the graphics card, and share our initial hot-off-the-press impressions. The Core i9 13900H processor has a workload TDP of 70 watts, 14 physical cores, 6 performance type cores, 8 efficient type cores, and in addition 6 hyper-threading cores. In our stress tests, specifically in Cinebench R23, with all 20 threads at 100% load, the processor started powerfully with a TDP of 110 watts, but after 10 minutes, it stabilized around 60 watts. The frequency in this multi-core scenario decreased from 3800 MHz to 3000 MHz, where it stabilized. Temperatures ranged from 94 degrees Celsius in the initial minutes of the test to 18 degrees Celsius after 10 minutes of continuous rendering. The noise dropped from 47-48 decibels in performance mode to 40 decibels at the end. As the consumption and working frequency decreased, the system automatically adjusted the fans as expected. Clearly, the cooling system is being pushed to its limits, and Cinebench R23 highlights this fact. If during an initial run when it's cold we scored 18,000 points in the multi-core test, this score drops to 15,000 after 10 minutes, indicating almost a 20% decline in performance. The ZenBook Pro 14 OLED may not have a vapor chamber, but it does have 5 heat pipes that, in my opinion, gave their all to handle the heat onslaught. Let's not forget about the graphics card. Combining the two components, the cooling system must handle a combined TDP of at least 125 watts, which isn't a small feat in a 14.5-inch chassis. The RTX 4060 graphics card may not be rocket speed, but it still reached 85-90 watts in Cyberpunk 2077, where we saw unexpected results for a non-gaming laptop. Before running PCMark 10, we use the MUX switch and set it to discrete GPU for a more relevant score for this system's capabilities. Again, we don't have advanced Optimus, so be patient when playing with the MS Hybrid mode to save battery when you're away from the charger, or the discrete GPU mode when you want to squeeze every FPS from the dedicated graphics card. The system requires a restart each time you switch between these modes. The petite ZenBook Pro 14 OLED confidently follows in the footsteps of its larger sibling when it's well cooled and the room isn't too hot. The performance drops are more pronounced in longer tests, and the slowdown is more marked in the smaller laptop, which is expected. Regarding CUDA/RTX processing power, we shouldn't compare the 4060 to the 4080. Those who do GPU rendering should pay close attention to the dedicated graphics card. For instance, the ZenBook Pro 14 OLED is also available in a 4070 variant, which might be worth considering for those working with applications that heavily utilize the graphics card. In rendering, the processor reached 94 degrees Celsius, the most demanding scenario for its 14 cores. Still, in gaming, it didn't exceed 80–85 degrees Celsius in Cyberpunk 2077. Obviously, here, the processor's TDP is low, below 30 watts, and often even under 25 watts. The temperature in the keyboard area during extended rendering reached 39–41 degrees Celsius, which is acceptable by all standards, with a finger-level temperature around 35 degrees Celsius. The difference of 5–6 degrees is perceived as warm, but not hot. As mentioned at the beginning of this video, if we had an elevated keyboard, even slightly, its temperature would have been 7–8 degrees Celsius lower. The graphics card reaches a TDP of 85–90 watts and doesn't exceed 80 degrees Celsius, suggesting that the heat pipes and robust airflow are doing their job. The laptop was tested in performance mode and the noise generated never exceeded 46–48 decibels, neither during rendering nor gaming sessions. In standard mode, the noise doesn't go beyond 40 decibels, but I always like to extract the most from these laptops. I didn't focus on gaming since the ZenBook Pro 14 OLED is not a gaming laptop. However, for my own satisfaction, I ran a demanding game out of sheer curiosity to see how a Core i9 and an RTX 4060 would fare in a compact, thin laptop. To make things even more challenging, I kept the high resolution of 2880 pixels by 1800 and with the low ray tracing settings and DLSS activated, but also with frame generation active, I achieved 55 FPS in Cyberpunk 2077, which isn't bad at all. Again, as in rendering, the noise didn't exceed 47–48 decibels. This means that the graphics card fan isn't more stressed than the one near the processor. Only the surface temperature of the laptop increased a bit, reaching 43 degrees Celsius, which honestly isn't the worst thing we've seen. The difference between 41 degrees and 43 doesn't really matter, it's just a detail. The ZenBook Pro 14 OLED comes in various configurations, with 16 or 32 gigs of RAM, but it can go up to 48. As for storage, the model we tested came with a 1TB SSD. The 76 Wh battery is quite large for this category, but considering we have a power-consuming OLED panel plus a hungry CPU, the autonomy isn't top-notch. Yes, we get 7 hours and a quarter, one can even achieve 8 hours in the PCMark 10 Modern Office battery test, provided you choose a lower brightness setting. However, I prefer to test with a brighter screen as in real-life scenarios. The autonomy isn't bad for this processor. Of course, with a low-power processor from the U or P series, we would have easily surpassed 10 hours. But here, we're not dealing with an ordinary Office Ultrabook. On the contrary, we have a powerhouse. And the charging is quite fast, reaching 50% in 30 minutes and hitting the psychological threshold of 80% in an hour. In conclusion, the ZenBook Pro 14 OLED is a powerful laptop, perhaps unexpectedly powerful on the CPU side, and it handles the heavy tasks in a content creator's life well. You can also play a game afterward, but don't set your expectations as high as for the ZenBook Pro 16X OLED. Just like its bigger brother, which we've continuously compared it to today and reviewed on this channel, the ZenBook Pro 14 OLED boasts an excellent OLED panel, well above the market average. Let me know in the comments section. What do you think about the new ZenBook Pro 14 OLED? That's all for today, and if you're still here, please subscribe to Techniqualities. Thank you, and see you next time.